There is a maintenance mistake that thousands of Volkswagen owners make without realizing it. They follow the dashboard. They follow the service booklet. They change the oil. They replace the brakes when they wear out. And they assume that if Volkswagen hasn't specifically told them to inspect something, it probably doesn't need attention. But here's the problem. A Volkswagen can be perfectly maintained according to its basic schedule and still develop expensive problems that a little proactive attention could have helped prevent. And the strange part is that some of the most useful maintenance habits aren't complicated at all. Some take minutes. Some cost almost nothing. And some involve checking a component long before it gives you an obvious warning. But before we get into them, there's something important you need to understand. There isn't one universal Volkswagen maintenance schedule. A Golf GTI, Jetta, Tiguan, Atlas, Golf R, and older TDI can have completely different requirements depending on the engine, transmission, model year, and market. Volkswagen itself tells owners to follow the maintenance schedule specific to their vehicle. So, this isn't about ignoring the factory schedule. It's about understanding what the schedule actually means. Because scheduled maintenance is a baseline. It is not a crystal ball. And once you understand that distinction, some of the most overlooked Volkswagen maintenance habits start to make a lot more sense. The first one involves one of the most expensive components in the entire car: the transmission. If your Volkswagen uses a DSG, don't assume every DSG should be treated exactly the same. Volkswagen's own maintenance documents show that DSG fluid service can be required at specific intervals on certain models and transmissions. For example, some VW maintenance schedules specify DSG fluid changes at 40,000 miles, while other configurations have different requirements. That matters because the DSG isn't simply a conventional automatic transmission. Inside it are clutch packs, hydraulic systems, gears, and electronic controls that have to work together with remarkable precision. And the fluid isn't just there to make everything slippery, it plays a role in the operation of the transmission itself. Which means the right fluid, the correct procedure, and the correct service interval matter. The mistake is thinking, my Volkswagen has a DSG, so I know when it needs service. You don't. You need to know which DSG you have. That's the difference. Because the first real Volkswagen maintenance trick isn't memorizing one magic mileage number. It's identifying the exact drivetrain in your car before deciding what maintenance it needs. And that principle becomes even more important when we get to the engine. Because underneath the hood, two Volkswagens that look almost identical from the outside can have completely different maintenance requirements. Take timing systems. Some Volkswagen engines use timing belts, others use chains, and treating them as though they are interchangeable is a recipe for trouble. A timing system failure can turn a relatively routine maintenance job into major engine damage, depending on the engine design. But here's where many owners make another mistake. They hear a mileage number online and assume it applies to their car. It might not. Volkswagen's current maintenance information includes very different inspection and replacement requirements depending on the engine and model. Some newer applications, for example, specify extremely long intervals for checking toothed belt components, while older engines can have very different requirements. So if you own a Volkswagen and you're not completely sure whether your engine uses a timing belt or chain, or what its exact factory interval is, that should be your first question. Not the internet. Not a random forum comment. Your actual vehicle documentation. Because the most dangerous maintenance number is the one that belongs to somebody else's engine. And now we get to a problem that can develop so slowly that you might not notice it until the engine has already lost performance. Carbon buildup. Direct injection engines change the way fuel enters the engine. Instead of spraying fuel into the intake tract, where it can wash across the intake valves, direct injection sends fuel directly into the combustion chamber. That creates advantages. But it also changes what happens to the backside of the intake valves. Oil vapor from the crankcase ventilation system can accumulate there over time, and eventually deposits can affect airflow. The important point is not that every Volkswagen will automatically need expensive carbon cleaning. It won't. The point is that symptoms such as rough running, misfires, hesitation, or declining performance shouldn't automatically be dismissed as just an old Volkswagen. The smarter approach is diagnosis first. If carbon buildup is actually contributing to the problem, then cleaning the valves may make sense. But there's an even more interesting question. Why did the buildup happen? Because replacing the symptom without understanding the cause can turn maintenance into an endless cycle. And that brings us to one of the smallest components in the car that can create a surprisingly annoying problem: the brakes. Most owners think about brakes in terms of pads and rotors, but the braking system contains moving hardware that needs to move freely. A sticking caliper can cause uneven pad wear, heat buildup, noise, or reduced efficiency. And this is why a careful brake inspection should involve more than simply asking, "How much pad is left?" A technician should be looking at the complete braking system: pad wear patterns, rotor condition, caliper movement, hardware, corrosion, and whether anything appears to be dragging. Volkswagen's maintenance documentation specifically includes brake inspection as part of routine service. That sounds obvious. But here's what separates proactive maintenance from reactive maintenance. Reactive maintenance asks, "Is it broken?" Proactive maintenance asks, "Does anything look like it is beginning to become a problem?" That mindset becomes extremely useful when you move from the wheels to the roof, especially if your Volkswagen has a sunroof. A sunroof isn't simply a piece of glass sitting above your head. It is also part of a drainage system. Rainwater that reaches the surrounding channels has to be directed away through designated drains. And if those drains become restricted, water can end up where you absolutely don't want it: inside the vehicle. The result might begin as something almost harmless: a damp smell, a wet headliner, moisture around a footwell, a mysterious stain. But water and modern cars are not a good combination. Because modern Volkswagens contain wiring, sensors, control modules, and electronic components throughout the vehicle. And Volkswagen's own newer maintenance documentation actually lists sunroof drain inspection and cleaning for certain models. That's important because it completely changes the secret trick narrative. Some maintenance habits aren't secret at all. They're simply easy to overlook. And that is exactly why owners miss them. Now here's another one: oil. Almost every Volkswagen owner knows they need to change the oil. But fewer owners pay attention to something that can be just as important: the exact oil specification. The bottle can have the correct viscosity and still not be the specification required for your particular Volkswagen. That's why the smart approach isn't, "Is this synthetic?" It's, "Does this oil meet the specification my engine requires?" Volkswagen provides vehicle-specific maintenance information and owner documentation for exactly this reason. And this is one of the easiest habits to adopt. Before an oil change, verify the specification for your exact engine. Then make sure the oil being installed actually meets it. Don't rely solely on the words "full synthetic." Don't rely solely on the viscosity number. And don't assume the same oil is correct for every Volkswagen sitting in the parking lot. Because two cars wearing the same badge can have very different requirements. And if you're using an independent shop, this becomes even more important. Not because independent shops are bad. Quite the opposite. A good Volkswagen specialist can be incredibly valuable. But you want the technician working from the specifications for your exact vehicle, not from a generic database entry that happens to say Volkswagen. Now let's talk about coolant. This is another area where owners often think in only one dimension: mileage. But Volkswagen maintenance schedules frequently use both mileage and time for different service items. For example, current VW documentation lists certain fluids and components with time-based intervals, including brake fluid, while other maintenance items have different combinations of mileage and years. That tells you something important. A car doesn't stop aging because you don't drive it. Rubber ages, seals age, fluids age, grease changes, electrical connections can corrode, and cooling systems don't care whether your odometer moved yesterday. So if you own a Volkswagen that spends most of its life parked, don't assume low mileage automatically means low maintenance. Sometimes it means the opposite. And there's one more area where low mileage owners can get caught: the battery. A vehicle that sits for long periods can experience a completely different type of wear from one that drives every day. Repeated short trips can also prevent some systems from reaching ideal operating conditions. So your driving pattern matters almost as much as your mileage. City traffic, short trips, long highway journeys, hot climates, cold climates, heavy towing, long periods of storage. All of these can change what normal use actually means. Volkswagen itself notes that severe operating conditions can require certain maintenance operations between the normal intervals. And this is where the real secret appears. It isn't a hidden button. It isn't a magical additive. It isn't a special trick that only a tiny percentage of Volkswagen drivers know. It's something much simpler. The best maintained Volkswagens aren't necessarily owned by people who spend the most money. They're often owned by people who pay the most attention. They know their engine. They know their transmission. They know whether their car uses a belt or chain. They know which oil specification belongs in the engine. They know what maintenance is actually scheduled. And they notice small changes before those changes become big symptoms. A slightly different shift, a new vibration, a damp smell, uneven brake wear, a coolant level that keeps dropping, a new oil leak, a strange noise on startup, a warning light that comes and goes. None of these automatically means disaster, but each one is information. And experienced owners learn to treat those clues as an early warning system. That's the real difference between maintaining a Volkswagen and simply repairing one. The factory schedule gives you the foundation. Your driving conditions add another layer. And observation fills in the gaps. So if you own a Volkswagen, don't blindly follow a generic internet list telling you to replace everything early. And don't blindly assume that anything not printed on a schedule is useless. Instead, take your exact model year, engine, transmission, mileage, climate, and driving habits, and build your maintenance decisions around those facts. Because the biggest Volkswagen maintenance mistake isn't missing one secret trick. It's assuming every Volkswagen needs the same one. And that may be the most important thing to remember the next time your dashboard tells you that everything is fine. A dashboard can tell you when something has reached a programmed service interval. It can't tell you everything about the health of the machine. That part still requires attention. And sometimes, the 5 minutes you spend looking for a small problem can save you from discovering a very expensive one later. So here's the question. What Volkswagen maintenance habit do you think most owners completely overlook? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more Volkswagen maintenance tips that focus on what actually matters, not gimmicks, not unnecessary upgrades, and not internet myths, subscribe for the next one.